Honestly, I'm having real trouble, Mike, because I could go on for days. So I'm going to try and come to a close fairly soon. I've got a friend who will never forgive me if I don't ask you about his obsession, which is Julian Cope.
Ah,
Have you ever had Have you ever had anything to do with the Arch Drude?
you're joking. I adore Julian. Yes. I when I was very fortunate. I mean, Julian's somebody who I've loved since I was a teenager,
Me too.
and growing up in Merseyside, the legend that was Eric's loomed large, and I sadly didn't take advantage. I mean, a friend of mine, a couple of friends of mine went to Eric's. They used to do matinee shows. And I remember they went to see Spiz Energy play there, and they were supported by the Frantic Elevators, which was Mick Hucknall's band before
Okay.
Simply Red. And that was, I think, in March 1980, and the club shut shortly afterwards. So sadly, I
Yeah.
never got to go to Eric's, but obviously that was the club that inspired Julian to abandon his career as a school teacher. He was at teacher training college and become a musician, and form the Teardrop Explodes and go off down that path. So I'd always, I at school, I remember one of my best mates at school, Martin. He came in with a copy of The Greatness and Perfection of Love, which is like the first single that Julian put out from Well Shut Your Mouth. I'd just been blown away by it, and then the World Shut Your Mouth album and Fried were really big records when I was at university, and then going to see him live when he really got his career, and in there was that moment. Is that some
St. Julian
artists, they
sort of
just,
thing.
yeah, with St. Julian, he had that moment when commercial success and critical acclaim aligned beautifully, and he had that moment in the spotlight and sold some records, and it was a fabulous record, great live shows, but I don't think that ever sat comfortably on his shoulders,
Yeah.
and he moved away
I,
from it. Nation Underground, I think, is probably sunk by its own production, but some beautiful songs on that.
yeah.
um
Well,
and
fair.
and then I think you start moving into a really interesting career with Julian, and Peggy's Suicide is a stunning record. But then also the kind of like much less commercial records like Skellington and Julian are as well. And it sort of was moving off into eco protest, and then he became obviously started researching deeply into Neolithic history,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the Modern Antiquarian is still one of the greatest works of Neolithic history. And if you can pick up a copy and you have very, very deep pockets,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
outrageous that it's out of print and it costs a
Yeah. Yeah.
fortune to fucking buy. But
I know.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
Joe and I, my wife and I, did our courtship going
I
around the
know.
country visiting all the Neolithic sites in the book.
No way. Because I got two friends but the guys I used to be in a band with they've both done that.
Yeah, no,
Taken their poor partners around
yeah,
various trips around bits of the book.
it's a fabulous book. So I mean, I then got to
That's
know
so funny.
Julian because my friend Martin, who at school brought The Greatest Perfection in, said he'd said, "Do you know some? Oh God, there was a neighbour of ours, an actor who lives in North London, who'd apparently got the rights to make a film of Head On, Julian's memoir."
Wow.
And we just went, "Oh my God, I'd love to get involved in that somehow." So anyway, we went and talked to him, and he said, "Actually, the rights have reverted back to Julian. You'd have to, if you want to do something with it, you'll have to go and talk to him." And by that time, I was working at Warner Chappell, and at Warner Chappell, we administered Zoo Music, which was the music publishing company run by Dave Balfe, who was in the Teardrop Explodes, and then went on to
Yeah.
run Food Records. and Bill Drummond, who was, Julian Cope's manager in The Teardrop Explodes, manager of Echo and the Bunnymen. More famously, was in the KLF. Anyway,
Yeah.
long story short, there was a perfectly good reason to pick up the phone to Julian and say, I'm your publisher. I'd love to come and meet you. And so we went down, had a chat with him, talked to him about the idea of trying to develop Head On into a film. And after that, I was able to build a good relationship with Julian. I went to see him a few times. I wish I could. I mean, the great thing is he's still putting out music. He's been putting
Yeah.
out these terrific. And I'll show you the latest ones.
You're surrounded by all these treasures. It's
Hang
like
on,
Tutankhamun's.
take the headphones off.
Sure.
So this is the latest one. He does these things called Cope's Notes, which is
Right.
a book. So it's a really lovely, like 4,500 word essay about how he wrote The Modern Antiquarian,
Right.
along with a CD of brand new songs and theatre pieces inspired by megalithic culture. But that's what I mean. There's a lot of these. This is a particularly good one. It's the story of how World Shut Your Mouth was made, and again a CD of 11 songs, outtakes, demos from
I'll have to
from
try and
that
get
era.
those.
This is a particularly fabulous one. I mean, it's him writing again about, this is like outtakes from Head On, and there's
Right.
the legendary flying jacket that he used to wear.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think Julian Cope is one of the greatest visionaries this country's ever produced. I absolutely adore the man, and I think it's a great shame he's not recognised more than he is.
Yeah.
He's somewhat reclusive, I think, these days. He's not going out and playing live much. He's not managed, but I think he has a good life, with his family,
Good.
in Wiltshire, and is still doing great creative stuff.
Fantastic. That I've got Head On. It's a book that's sort of doubled up with
Yeah,
another book
with
you wrote. Yeah.
I think it's Head On
I
one
can't think what it's
side and
called now.
Repossessed
That's it.
which is basically
It's
Head On, and
one of them anyway.
yeah, it's one of the
Contains my favorite line of all time, which is, "We're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the curb."
amen to that.
Yeah.
It
It's
is.
just superb.
I mean, I find myself reading an awful lot of music memoirs, not least because I'm trying to write my own. But
Okay.
the Head On still is at the very top of the greatest
Yeah.
music memoirs of all
Oh my
time.
God. The bit about making a huge Scalextrics track with a ashtray on the top of, and it was just the use of language. We would play a game with a police car where you would hide one of the car. Someone would hide a car. It said in tunnels or obscure parts of the track, and then someone else would drive around with the old 1970s police car Scalextrics in the game that they called "Is There a Problem, Officer?"
What's not to
Oh,
love?
oh, I just love him so much. Anyway, that's brilliant. Okay, that's the last
I
one
hope
to
he
go.
can be tempted out to do some more shows. I was very. I mean, yeah, he hasn't done any since COVID. I think, unfortunately, he was doing a small tour to promote a new album in 2020, and that's the last time he's played live.